and economists called socialism achieved by the ballot box societal suicide. She called communism implemented at the point of a gun societal murder. Benjamin Franklin feared America would one day commit societal suicide. Based on what you see today, does that make sense to you? Now here's the plain truth. The founders were imperfect men. They built an imperfect document. On September 18th, 1787, a woman named Elizabeth Powell stopped Benjamin Franklin outside the Constitutional Convention. And she asked him, "Well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy?" Franklin looked at her and said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." 239 years later, America is about to turn 250 years old. And the question Franklin was really asking, the one that kept him and Madison and Jefferson up at night, is more urgent right now than it has been in any of our lifetimes. Have we kept it? Today, I'm going to show you both sides of that question and what common sense demands we do before the answer becomes no, we have not kept it. Welcome, Patriots, to this edition of Common Sense for America. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Now let's dive into today's topic. Here is the argument the left makes, and they're not entirely wrong. The founders' structural safeguards, the left argues, have always protected some Americans at the expense of others. The original Constitution counted enslaved people as 3/5 as a human being. Women could not vote. The Electoral College was designed in part by men who owned other men. The left argues that calling for a return to the founding principles can be a convenient cover for returning to the founding inequalities. Now, they also point out that the most recent threats to democratic norms did not come from socialist professors. They came from inside the system itself. They point to more than 60 courts rejecting claims of a stolen 2020 election. They argue that the real tyranny of the majority problem in America today is the minority using structural mechanisms to override the will of the people. Wyoming has the same number of senators as California. That is not majority tyranny, they say. That is minority veto. These are legitimate arguments from serious people, and they're not entirely wrong. Now, here's the argument the right makes, and they're not entirely wrong either. Benjamin Franklin's fear was specific. He was not worried about foreign invasion. He was worried about something Lincoln identified 50 years later in his 1838 Lyceum address. Lincoln said, "At what point is the approach of danger to be expected? If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher." He was saying we are our own danger. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. Those were Lincoln's words. The right argues we are watching that suicide in slow motion right now. The VDem Institute downgraded the United States in 2021, citing erosion in judicial independence and erosion in electoral integrity. In Illinois, where I grew up, Cook County and St. Clair County are overwhelmingly Democratic, and they control the entire state, which is predominantly Republican everywhere else. Texas, the foundation of Republican national strategy for a generation, is now tipping the other way. Houston is gone, Dallas is gone, Austin, San Antonio, and El Paso are trending to the Democrats to become blue. The same way, they're all trending this way not because Republican ideas have lost the argument, because population concentration in the big cities create voting blocks that overwhelm everyone else. Franklin called this the tyranny of the majority. The founders built the Electoral College specifically to prevent the tyranny of the majority. We built the Senate specifically to prevent the tyranny of the majority. And both institutions are under sustained attack from the very people who will benefit from their dismantling. The right is not entirely wrong in this view. Now, here's the real problem, and it is not the left or the right. It's that both parties have stopped asking what is good for the republic and started asking what is good for the party. And the distance between those two questions is now the distance between what America was designed to be and what it is becoming. Now think about that. Hugo Chavez was not a military dictator who seized power in a coup in Venezuela. He was democratically elected in Venezuela in 1998 with 56% of the vote on a platform of helping the poor and fighting corruption. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Within a year, he had brought forth a referendum rewrite the entire Venezuelan constitution, abolishing the bicameral Congress and restructuring the courts with loyalists. He used democratic legitimacy to win elections and used that elected power to change the rule. He used the changed rules to make future elections unwinnable for his opposition. And he used economic crises to justify emergency powers and then made those emergency powers permanent. A literate, oil-rich Western democracy was converted into an authoritarian socialist state in under 20 years. Not by invasion, but by the ballot box. Franklin saw it coming 2 centuries before it happened. And Ayn Rand, the novelist and economist, called socialism achieved by the ballot box societal suicide. She called communism implemented at the point of a gun societal murder. Benjamin Franklin feared America would one day commit societal suicide. Based on what you see today, does that make sense to you? Now here's the plain truth. The founders were imperfect men. They built an imperfect document. Slavery was a moral catastrophe, an outrage. They failed to resolve that. But they also built something into the document that no other government document in human history has ever done. A system capable of correcting its own moral failures while maintaining continuous institutional stability. The 13th, the 14th, the 15th, the 19th, and the 24th Amendments are proof of this, as are countless laws protecting the freedoms and the equality of our people. The system worked when we used it. The question is whether we still have the will to use it. Thomas Sowell said that the most important distinction in politics is between what sounds good and what actually works. Dismantling the Electoral College sounds democratic. What it actually produces is a country governed by 5 metropolitan areas. Eliminating the Senate filibuster sounds efficient, but doing that probably produces a system where every election is a winner-take-all revolution. The founders knew this. That's why they built friction into the system on purpose. Here is the common sense solution. This is the reset button. The distance from our founding document is what caused this problem. Closing that distance is the answer. Every state must establish an independent redistricting commission with real legal protection, like a 2/3 majority requirement to change that redistricting power. We don't want it to be overridden, a simple majority vote. It's a constitutional amendment, and it can't be changed frivolously. It can't be bypassed the moment it becomes inconvenient, as Virginia just did. They just demonstrated how frivolous their constitutional amendment was. Congress must pass the Save America Act. Photographic identification and proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections, and I would prefer to vote in all elections, but at least in federal elections. Not because fraud is everywhere, because the integrity of the ballot is the foundation every other right rests upon. And we must resist every effort to dismantle the Electoral College and the Senate's structural protections, because those institutions are not obstacles to democracy. They are the reason we still have a democracy. Here's what you need to remember. Franklin did not say the republic was doomed. He said it was yours to keep if you choose to keep it. The enemy is not at the gates. The enemy, as Lincoln told us, springs up from among us. But the founders gave us every tool we need to drive it back. If we have the courage to use those tools, we can keep our democracy. Now, talk about this with your family this summer. We're about to turn 250 years old. That is worth a conversation at the dinner table. Now, tell me in the comments about that conversation. Do you think we're keeping the republic? I want to know what you think. Now, until then, I'm Bruce Rutherford. May God bless you and yours, and God bless America.